Good evening. This week's Parshas Balak. It reminds me of a famous vart that the Oyev Yisrael, the Apterov, who outlived most of his Chaverim, that he was the best friends with the Choyze and with Reb Mendele Rimanov and the Koznitzer Magid. They all were nifter, and he lived another 10 years after all of them. But he was called the Apter of the Oyev Yisrael. Every mitzvah, every drasha that he made and said, he tied together with the concept of a Yid truly loving his fellow Yid. And he made a statement to his Talmidim that every parsha even is tied to Avos Yisrael. So one of the Hasidim asked him on the spot, Rebbe, where do you find in Balak that Avos Yisrael? So he said the very name Balak. Balak is spelled Bais Lamed Kuf. V'ohavta l'reyacha kamocha. So the Talmud says, V'yahavta l'reyacha kamocha, Balak begins with a Beis or a Vase, but V'yahavta begins with a Vav, not with a Beis. And the Lamed is the Lamed, and then kamocha is a long Chaf. So, and kamocha is with a Kuf. Balak is with a kuf, and kamocha is with a chaf, long chaf. So the Apterov answered him and says, if you have true Avos Yisrael, you are not medaktek in the oisius, which was a joke, but the idea that he wanted to prove that in Shoirish that you could find a link even if it makes sense or not. But if you're going to start looking for the faults or the difficulties in the relationship, and you're going to be madgish, underscore that, the relationship will never work. And that's what he meant by you can't be medaktek in the oisius, in the actual quality of the other person's personality. Now, the Sedra begins that Balak wanted to curse the Jews, and he commissioned Bilam to do so. Now, there is a question in the Gemara, Brachas Dav Zayin. Bilam knew that there is a 16th of a second every day that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is angry at Klal Yisrael. And he felt that if he could seize that moment, that 16th of a second to curse them, that in that moment of anger, he would succeed. So Tosfos on that Amud asks that even if he cursed Klal Yisrael, what could he say in a 16th of a second? So Tosfos answer, the Gemara says he would have said Kalem. Kalem, finished them off. And even if he got only the Chaf of Kalem, the Kuf, the Kuf, at the beginning of the word Kalem, to finish them off, it would have been enough. So from that, the Baal Shem Tov said, from that Tosfos and from that Gemara, that if a person is davening Shachris, and he comes to, let's say today, Chatzos is 1:02. 1:02 in the afternoon, that's when Chatzos is. And the person begins Shemona Esrei and says only the word Baruch, the first word of Shemona Esrei, he got his foot into the door and he could finish the Shemona Esrei, and it's all considered on this side of Chatzos, because technically once you hit Chatzos, you're not supposed to daven Shacharis. I mean, there are opinions of later times that the Bach holds like 33 minutes after Chatzos, you can still say Shacharis Shemona Esrei. That's one of the reasons why we can't daven mincha. It's not like when Chatzos comes that you can daven mincha. You have to wait another till, like today was 1:37, that you couldn't say Shemona Esrei of mincha until 1:37. And that's the Bach Shita. And we paskin half of our halachas, and the things we're noig al pi halacha is the Bach. So he was big enough to say when he held Chatzos was, and when you could say a Shemona Esrei until. But the Baal Shem Tov said that even if you go with the regular Chatzos, the 102, which is today, every day 2 weeks ago, it was 12:57. Every day it went up a minute. But the Baal Shem Tov says from this story with Bilam, we see that even if a person gets the slightest statement, word, or letter into what he wants to say, that he could end up saying Shemona Esrei even before Chatzos with just one word. Now, we know that when they came to Bilam the first time, he said, I have to ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he could tell me, can I go with you or not? And Hashem said to him, Lo say lechi moem, ki varuchu, this is a gebenched, a blessed people, and you can't go curse them. He said, no. The very next day, suddenly, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, no problem, you can go with them. What happened? So the Mefarshim explain, and Rashi talks about it. The first day when they came to him, there was a sincere, in other words, they hated the Jews and Bilam hated the Jews. There was no discussion of covet or of money. So there was a certain altruism, a certain sincerity that existed that could effectuate the curse, because he was doing it, like you would say, lishma. He was doing it out of pure conviction that he wanted the Jews to get cursed, but he had no personal benefit. But when he turned them down and they came back the next day with a message from Balak, I'm going to honor you, I'm going to give you so much money. Then already he had Negias. And with Negias, you can't succeed in a mission. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, oh, you're thinking now about the silver and the gold and the covet that you're going to get? Yeah, now you can go with them because your curses won't mean anything. Once you have Negias in it, then you cannot effectively do what you would like to do. Now we see that he said that even if Balak is going to give me, Bilam said, even if Balak gives me a house, his house, filled with silver and gold, I can only say what Hashem is going to direct me to say. So the Mefarshim, some ask, why did he say his house, Balak's house, filled with gold and silver? Why didn't he just say, even if he gives me a house full of gold and silver, I can only do what HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells me to do anyway. Why did he say his house, Balak's house? Because the Mefarshim say that Bilam was really a Rasha Merusha. And not only in terms of all the Averas he did every single day, like the Gemara says, ugly, that he lived with his animal twice a day. Intimacy, I mean, ugly as could be. But he was a Navi. Mitzad Tumah, not Mitzad Kedusha. V'lo kam b'Yisrael od Navi k'Moshe. So the Gemara darshans, V'lo kam od b'Yisrael. Avol be'umos oilam, but by the Goyim, there was a Navi as big, and that was Bilam. But it was Mitzad Tumah. Now, the Pasuk says that when he got up in the morning, he ran and saddled his donkey, Ve'achavoshes asono, and the Rashi even asks that he had so many servants and a butler and people to serve him. Why was he doing this himself? So Rashi answers that the sin is mekalkeles es ashura. The hatred of the Yidden was so high on the list of Bilam that he couldn't wait to start instructing, instructing his staff, take this, take that, I need this for the trip, I need that. He didn't want to take the extra few minutes even. He ran with such thirst and enthusiasm that he himself did it not to waste a few minutes to instruct, and he rather schlep it and carry it and do what he had to do for the purpose of his trip. And that really tells us the loud message that we can be blinded so easily, like it says, that sinna, hatred, is mekalkeles es ashura, that it can cause someone not to see straight and be able to size up a situation. And love, the same thing. That sometimes someone can be so blinded by a love for another person that reason and rhyme would tell them that this is not the person for you, this is not someone that family and our family and all the trimmings don't go together. But if there's love, they can be blinded and want no matter what to do. His hatred was so great that he did it himself. And we have to know that the purity of our missions in life can always be deviated and digressed by images and feelings that we harbor, that we can miss the boat completely. You know, I was saying just a moment ago about the purity of a mission and the difference of why he didn't go the first day and he did go the second day. So the Hasidim of the Kotzker Rebbe once asked him, Rebbe, why is it that the Catholics are so matzliach? Look at the gigantic churches that they built. They have no problem with money. They do. And look at the Yidden. We're struggling in a shul to fix the air conditioning. Well, they didn't say air conditioning. There was no air conditioning then. But we struggled to put together a shalosh shudas and have fresh herring and challah, and we're always in a struggle. And look at our buildings, that they need such repair and everything. So he answered them and said, the Catholics are successful here in Olam Hazeh because they serve the sheker with an emes. That means the religion is false. We know that. And the religion being false, someone should not want to serve it. But they are so, like the communists, were so brainwashed for the movement. Everyone should have equal in the house. There shouldn't be such poverty. And one guy has such richness. And at the end, of course, sheker ein lo raglayim, and it crumbled. The whole system. But that's what he was saying, the Kotzker, that the Goyim served the sheker with an emes, and unfortunately we, the Yidden, served the emes with sheker. That we are not up to par in how we live and what we do in our lifetime. And that's why there's such trouble. And that's what the Kotzker answered them. Now, we know that in Pirkei Avos, we just said it, that there are three differences between the Talmidim of Bilam and the Talmidim of Avram Avinu. Because Avram Avinu reacted to three things in one way, and Bilam reacted in a different way. So the Mishnah says that by Avram Avinu, he has an ayin toiva, a good eye. There is an expansiveness. There is the dignity of graciousness. And the Medrash says, when it's constantly comparing, even the vort that I just told you about, he got up and did the donkey because it's Mekalkelis Es Ashur, and the Medrash, excuse me, says on that Achav, who was a Rasha, but when somebody came to him to eat, he asked him, he gave him bread, and he said to them, is this the kind of bread that you're accustomed to in your house? And if they answered and said no, we usually eat this type of bread, or even if they said, yeah, this is the bread, he would bring them finer, better bread than what they said. But Avram Avinu, when he came, and the three angels, the three malachim, and the Ramban says that he knew that they were angels, so they don't eat. So what was he making this whole fuss about? Because when you are in Olam Hazeh, you have to be noyeg like Olam Hazeh. People in this world, if they want to respond to a guest with graciousness, they have to offer them the best. And if they're used to linen napkins instead of paper, give them the linen. Avram Avinu, he didn't just like Achav give better bread. Avram Avinu went and enhanced like a creation. Like it says in Kabbalah Svarim, that when he ran to the flock of animals to take an animal to give them the tongues, and tongue was considered like the highest level of delicacy. He couldn't find an animal that he liked. So we know that Avram Avinu wrote the Sefer HaYetzirah, which is the whole creation. That's how the Maral Prague made the Goylem, with the secrets of Sefer HaYetzirah, which Avram Avinu wrote himself. All the secrets of creation. So he knew how to create an animal on the spot. And that's what he did. And that's why the Pasuk says, say the Mekubalim, it says, Uven habokar asher asa, the cattle, the cow that he created, he made. Not Uven habokar asher heichen, or asher shochat, but he says Uven habokar asher asa, because he made a new animal on the spot, and that's how he was able to serve milchiks and fleishiks together, because only an animal that's born naturally in this world, from a mother, from a father, from everything of how they are created, are the halachas of basar b'cholav, milchiks and fleishiks. But an animal that flies down from heaven isn't something that you have to keep the halacha of basar b'cholav. Anyway, so the point being that Avram Avinu went above and beyond, that's called Ayin Tova. Now, Ayin Tova was for Avram Avinu, but says the Mishnah in Ovos that by Bilam it was Ayin Ra. And as the Noyam Elimelech, the Rebbe Reb Melech, the famous brother of Rav Zusha Meyanapol, he said, why is a person created with two eyes? He only has one nose and he only has one mouth. So why two eyes? So he answered and said, one eye is to see good and one eye is to see the bad, meaning shiflus atzmuso. That was his lashon. That a person could pick himself up and feel he's a yid, and that if a goy is screaming at him, dirty Jew, excuse me, he has every right to feel haughtiness, vayigba libo b'Hashem, to pick himself up and feel, I am better than you and I'm greater than you and I have a neshama. But on the other hand, the other eye is to see the shiflus atzmuso, that he really is but a bug. We're here, we're gone, we're here for the years we have. We're powerless. A person, chas v'sholom lo aleinu, becomes sick. What can he do? He can try his best to heal and to get better, but if there's a gzeira min hashamayim for fallen, he's only like a fly. So, said Rabbi Balak that one eye is to see how big a yid is and to hold your greatness as a yid, that you are special and that every mitzvah you do ascends and goes to Shemayim, to the highest of places. But on the other hand, you have to look at yourself like you're a nothing and a nobody. And they even tell over that there was a gezerah in the whole country from the Tsar, and the anti-Semites around the Tsar talked them into decreeing that all the Jews should have to leave the country at a certain time. And Reb Melech sat at his table and he saw what was going on with his Ruach HaKodesh. And when he saw that the Tsar was about to take his pen and dip it into the ink and sign this gezerah, Reb Melech sat at his desk in his house and banged on the table and said, "Nein, nein, nein. Absolutely not." And the ink tipped over and it fell all over the gezerah and it couldn't happen. That was a moment that Reb Melech used his supernatural koiches to help and save Klal Yisrael. But he was the biggest onav. Now for somebody that's an onav, he wouldn't sit by his table and think that he could effectuate what the Tsar is going to do and what he's not going to do. And that's why it says that Bilam was shesum ha'oyan. He was blind in one eye, which means, and they say on this Mishnah, that he was ayin raw, that he was exceptionally stingy and be happy with anything else. And we asked just before, why did Bilam say Melo Beso, his whole house? Why not just a house of silver and gold? But they say on this Mishnah that he had such an ayin raw that he wasn't happy just to have all the gold and silver. He didn't want Balak to have. In other words, he didn't want to drive down the street in his Rolls Royce and there should be somebody behind him with a Rolls Royce. He wanted the Rolls Royce, and you shouldn't have the Rolls Royce. That was Bilam. So, and that's the taich. He didn't want his house. And he didn't want Balak to remain with all that gold and silver. He wanted it, and he should not have it. That's why he said, Melo Beso. And that's the taich of what he was blind in one eye. One eye was so bad that it didn't want the slightest success by others. He wanted to be the star of the show and that nobody else was his competition. So the Das Zekenim and Balei Toisva says that we know that if, let's say there's a watchdog watching a flock of sheep at night, in the cold night, and the animal comes to attack one of the sheep, that's what the dog is there for. Now, what happens if they find in the morning that there is one of the sheep lying dead, that it was attacked? And the dog, the watchdog, was supposed to chase away anyone that came, but it didn't happen. And the Das Zekenim Balak asks, so why do we give the carcass of the killed sheep to the dog? La kelev tashlichano, so that we throw it as a gift. It's dead because he didn't do his job. He didn't chase away the other animal that was coming to attack. So the answer is, because, and the Mefarshim say the second shot in having a good eye or a bad eye, that when something happens that's negative, a sheep was killed, but that doesn't mean that we should dwell on that. We should look back in appreciation of the 20 years that dog was watching the sheep and no one was killed. Don't look at today the comment that your friend said to you, oh yeah, I'm friends for 35 years with that, but now she said this and that. Or she didn't include me at the luncheon. She forgot to call me, or she didn't reach me. That's it. It's the end of the relationship. In other words, we cannot harp and underscore the moment of disappointment that it discolors and dilutes all of the good of a lifetime that a friend or a spouse or a child or a community, a Rav sometimes gets offended by somebody in his shul, and he wants to quit. He's so offended. Okay, the guy offended you. You deserve to be apologized to. But give up everything? The 30 years you're there that the people bought you Hanukkah special things and then at Purim, all those Shalach Manisim and all the expressions of thanks and the trips to Eretz Yisrael, and how they treated your family and tried their best. So something happened one time. That one time is the end of this, and that's what the Das Zekanim and the Balei Toisus says about this Bilam, that by him there was no such thing of yesterday. There was no such thing as loyalty and what happened for the longest of time, and now there was maybe a problem, a temporary thing. And that says about the Das Zekanim, why we throw the meat, the dead body of the animal, to the dogs. Because the dog always was standing there faithful and loyal. And now that something happened, that doesn't take away everything that was good. And that's how we have to sharpen our attitudes with our loved ones and with our family and with our community and with our friends. Now, we know that when Bilam went, his ason, and by the way, it said in last week's in Perek Hey, Pirkei Avos, that one of the 10 things that was created, Ben Hashmashos, for the world, and it lists 10 things, the shamir that cut the stones in the Bais Hamikdash to make them perfectly straight and smooth, that was created Ben Hashmashos. Now, Ben Hashmashos, there's a lot of opinions of what is Ben Hashmashos. That means Shkia is when there's nightfall. In other words, there is sunset. And then it goes for a period of time. Some say shorter, some say 13 and a half minutes, some say this, some say that, and different opinions. So there were 10 things, and one of them was the mouth of this donkey that started to speak to Bilam. That mouthpiece, the power of that speech was created almost 3,000 years before that donkey came and spoke to Bilam. And the Mefarshim asked, why were these 10 things created Ben Hashmashos? I mean, HaKadosh Baruch Hu for 6 days created the world. So he could have created these things in the 6 days. Why did he wait for the last 13 or 16 minutes before Shabbos, Vayechulu Hashamayim V'Haaretz V'Chol Tzva'am? Why did he wait for that? And the Mefarshim answer a very powerful, short, to the point answer. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to instill in the Bria people to understand the value of a minute. That in the last few minutes, even Korach, where he went down, that opening in the earth was created in the Ben Hashmashos of creation. To teach us that when a person like Reb Moshe Feinstein said, by a Siyam Hashaz, when he made a Siyam Hashaz, he said that he is very happy that this is one of the first times that he's finishing Shas. So his Talmidim said, Rebbe, we were by 10 or 20 Siyam Hashas that you made. What do you mean it's the first one? He said, it's the first one that I'm doing with such simcha. I was at the simcha with the others, but this one, the level of the simcha is unbelievable. And why? He said, because this Siyam Hashas I'm making with all the minutes that I sat at a chuppah waiting to go up for Siddur Kedushin. I was going to officiate at a chasna, but they had the crowd come in, and I sat there for 15 or 20 minutes or 10 minutes, so I was able, he knew Shas Baal Peh, he was able to sit there and go up and down the pages in Gemara. He said, this Siyam Hashas I'm making now are from all the minutes that I rode in a car to get to where I was going. I gathered all these extra minutes, and that's what I learned this time Shas with. That's why I'm so happy. So the Kodesh Baruch Hu made in the time of creation in Bein HaShmashos, all these things to teach us to cherish. A person like Rabbi Yehuda cried that Rabbi Lazar ben Dordaya, who did tshuva at the end of his life, and they called out from Shemayim that he's muchan mezuman l'chaye olam haba with this tshuva that he did then. And they asked, the Chidush Arim asked, why Bocha Rebbe? Why did Rebbe, Rabbeinu HaKodesh, cry when he heard the baskol that Reb Lazar ben Dordaya Yermuchon umezuman l'chaye olam haba? He should have been happy that a person who was living like a Russia his whole life, and that suddenly he did such tshuva that he died while he was doing the tshuva. And that's what they called out from heaven, that you're muchan mezuman l'chay olam haba. Rabbeinu HaKodesh cried. He should have been thrilled. So they say that he cried because he saw how many people lost the opportunity. People thought, I lived my whole life on Machal Shabbos. That's too late, and I'm finished, and what am I going to do? Tshuva for 5 minutes? What difference is that going to make? That he cried because so many people didn't value and understand the power of even a few minutes, that they could devour the past and nullify and demolish the whole mountains of Averas in the 5 minutes. And that's why he cried. So coming back to our story with Bilam, it says that he saw when they're going that there's a malach in front with a sword. So he didn't want to get hurt, and he didn't want Bilam. So he kept moving to the side. Bilam didn't see this malach. So he thought that just the asam, the donkey, was playing around or was causing trouble, and the asam, the donkey, opened up its mouth and said, "I didn't serve you your whole life in hot and cold and this and that. I served so. So what are you so?" And what was his answer? Lu yesh cherev biyadi. If I would have a knife, a sword in my hand now, I would kill you. Now, if any one of you who are listening to this year would be driving in a car down a road, and your car stops, and the car begins shouting at you, "Don't go down this road, there's going to be trouble." The people first would be so shocked that the car is talking. Over here, even after he started to talk, Bilam fought him, said, "I would," but he didn't take heed. Here the Asan is suddenly talking. Maybe there's a message for you. And that's what the Chazal say on this. People are showed signs and messages from Shemayim every day of their life. Unfortunately, they do not seize the opportunity. It's a shouting car. The Asan is yelling. I couldn't go down. No, he answered, oh, if I had a sword, I would kill you right now. Why didn't he say and take heed? Then a minute later, the Malach showed himself, so he understood what the whole issue was. We may not be shouted at, but the acts in our life are the shouting. And people sometimes are so stubborn and so set in their ways of what they want or what they think that they will never stop and detour. Maybe this is not the thing I should be doing. Maybe this is not the friend I should be going out with, the way he's nonstop Lashon Hara or the Averis that he wants to do. Why should I listen to the person who says to me constantly, listen, you're struggling for a parnasa. What do you have 3 guests at your table on Shabbos? You have no money to even pay for the food. You're borrowing, you're this, you're working longer just to feed the strangers. That type of voice you have to avoid. That type of message, you have to realize that there's a time to heed the shouting and there is a time to ignore it. Now we have a few minutes left, and I want to say to you that this Sunday is the Yortzeit Tes Vov Tammuz of the Or HaChaim HaKadosh. And I just want to speak about him for a few minutes to realize the level. The Or HaChaim HaKadosh lived in Eretz Yisrael for 2.5 years, and then he was nifter, and he was buried on Har HaZeisim. I had the schus, Baruch Hashem, to be many times in Eretz Yisrael on his Yortzeit, and there are literally tens of thousands of people who come to his kever on his Yortzeit. And they come with the ambulances and they carry the sick on the stretchers over to it, that they should be able to spend 2 minutes, 5 minutes by the Or HaChaim HaKadosh. As I've said to you on many occasions, there are only 5 or 6 in the world from time of creation who had the title Kadosh, and he was one of them. The Al-Shach HaKadosh, the Or HaChaim HaKadosh, the Rabbeinu HaKadosh, the only Tana that had the title Kadosh was Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. So I just want to mention 2 points about him. The Baal Shem Tov tried 4 times to get to Eretz Yisrael, because he saw with his Ruach HaKodesh that if he got to Eretz Yisrael and he met and spoke with the Or HaChaim HaKadosh, he said that Mashiach would have come. Because he was a Bechina, the Baal Shem was a Bechina of Nefesh, and that the Or HaChaim HaKadosh was a Bechina of Ruach, and the Chibur of even in Gashmias, just as speaking one to the other face to face, would have caused a Chibur of Nefesh and Ruach, and that Mashiach would have come. So the Baal Shem Tov tried 4 times to get to Eretz Yisrael, and the 4th time he and his whole family were almost murdered mercilessly on an island that their ship never made it. And the Baal Shem Tov said, look, I tried 4 times, and now we were almost all killed. Obviously, Min HaShamayim, they do not want me to come and meet the Or HaChaim HaKadosh. The second thing I want to tell you about the Or HaChaim HaKadosh is that he was rich. And every Thursday, he used to give out a package of meat to the Talmidei Chachamim in Yerushalayim who couldn't afford to buy meat for Shabbos. And one time, a Talmud Chacham came to him and asked on Thursday, and he said, I gave out all the packages. and this Yid, Talmud Chacham, just left with the last package. So the Yid who came for the meat said to the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, "Oh, Oichet Mira Talmud Chacham, that last guy that just took the last package, he's also a Talmud Chacham." And he wasn't moiched. The Orach Chaim HaKadosh did not say anything. So there was a gezerah immediately that he's going to have to go into Golus, which means leave everything behind, his money, his family, and go out to different cities. No one will know him. He'll have to sleep on the benches of the Bais Medrash, and that type of hanhaga, which there were other tzaddikim, many tzaddikim, who provered Golus and said that there was an impending gezerah against Klal Yisrael, and the way to be mevatel the gezerah was that they should take on themselves to suffer in Golus. No one knew who they were. They had to eat from the public food wherever there was a shul that had a little bit of something, a hot drink and a soup or something. That's how they had to live. So the Orach Chaim HaKadosh went into Golus, and he went into a town. No one knew him, and he came there Friday afternoon, and he was sitting on the bench. And then the shul filled up, and there was a chacham, there was a Svardish rov in that shul, and they gave a klap that after the Suda Shabbos, everyone should come back to shul, and the Rav is going to say a drasha. So everybody Friday night came back, and meantime the Orach Chaim HaKadosh was just sitting there. He had nowhere to go, and he didn't even make Kiddush yet. And he was sitting in the last row, and the Rav gets up. It was Parshas Bechukosai. Everyone knows that the Orach Chaim HaKadosh says on Im Bechukosai Telechu 42 pshatim, 42 different things, divrei Torah on that pasuk. So the Rav got up and he said they just revealed to him from heaven the first 14 things that the Orach Chaim HaKadosh says in this parsha. And he said all 14. And at the end of saying it, the Orach Chaim HaKadosh calls out from the back row, Emes, Kach Omar Chaim ben Atar. The Orach Chaim HaKadosh's name was Chaim ben Atar. And he called out and said, yeah, the Rav quoted me correctly. They didn't know he was the Orach Chaim HaKadosh. He just said, it's true, it's accurate, what he just got done saying, the 14 pshatim. So the people in the audience wanted to get up and throw him out. So that's the way you talk about the Orach Chaim HaKadosh? Chaim ben Atar? So the Rav said, don't do anything. Maybe the man doesn't understand who the Orach Chaim HaKadosh is, and how holy he is, and how great he is, and that you're not supposed to quote him or say his name like that. You're supposed to say, Rab Morenu v'Rabbeinu. So that's what they said to him. But Shabbos morning after the Suda, everyone came back to hear the next 14 things that Orach Chaim HaKadosh said on Im Bechukosai Telechu. And again, the Orach Chaim HaKadosh calls out after the Rav says it, Emes, Kach Omar Chaim ben Atar. So the people said, wait, this guy is out to be Mavazah. We explained to him last night that this is not the way to refer to. So the Rav stopped them from doing anything and said, maybe he didn't understand you, maybe you weren't clear to him. So they went and they explained it to him again. but by Shalashudas, when the Rav said the last three of the 314 pshatim of the 42, and again he called out Emes Chaim ben Atar, Kach Amar Chaim ben Atar, they grabbed him and they threw him into the public jail. Now, Motzoi Shabbos, when we say Havdalah, there is one tzaddik in the world that is entrusted with the Shem Havaya that gives, when he makes Havdalah, he thinks of that Shem, and it gives Rishus for the world to continue another 6 days. In other words, otherwise, the Or Chaim HaKodesh says this in Bereshis, that the world was created for 6 days with a Shabbos at the end. And that's it. And because there's a tzaddik that's mechaven in Havdalah to this Shem, the world gets another 7 days. And it goes on like that. But there's only one tzaddik that's mechaven to this Shem. And the tzaddik was the Or Chaim HaKodesh. And they threw him into jail. So he had nothing to make Havdalah with. And that Rav went to sleep, and there was thunder and lightning and rain showering down to the world like But they showed the Rav in the dream that it's not only in his town, that everyone thought it's only in their town that it's raining and pouring, that it's in every city in the world. And the world is about to be destroyed like the Mabul. And the reason was because the Shem was not said, and it was it. And that they showed that to the Rav. So the Rav jumped out of his bed and ran to the Kehila and told them what he dreamt. And they ran to the jail and they begged Mechila to the Or Chaim HaKadosh. And they brought him the things to make Havdalah, and Vayoshoku Hamayim, calm, no more rain, no more thunder, no more lightning. And they said in Shemayim that since he suffered such zilzul and bizoyan with what they did to him, that he doesn't have to remain in Golus any longer. He can go back to his family and to his home in Yerushalayim. Zechuso yogein aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Amen v'amen.